I followed Bolu all my life, bore him children, and even until his death, he never promised me a wedding. Among his belongings, I found a photo he had always kept in his wallet, and only then did I realize there had always been someone else in his heart. At the age of 70, I took poison to end my life. My 2 sons watched me struggle to die in the sunlit rain, unmoved. After I took my last breath, they had me cremated immediately and, finding it inauspicious, didn't even keep the urn. My ashes were flushed down the funeral home's drain. My belongings were tossed outside like trash. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the time his white moonlight came to our door with a child, amidst their repeated accusations of me being cold-hearted and unwilling to take them in. I took out the divorce agreement and left that home without looking back. Yet, to my surprise, after I left, they completely fell apart. It's because of you that Godmother is still lying in the hospital. Someone as heartless as you. I don't want you as my mother. Little brother, why are you still talking to that wicked woman? Dad's here, hang up and come eat. The malice in the childish voice was impossible to hide. Listening to the dial tone in the receiver, I stared at my reflection in the mirror for a long time before realizing I had been reborn to the age of 27. And reborn to the 3rd day after Myra Gu brought her daughter to our doorstep. Myra Gu was Bolu's white moonlight. She had left the capital city 7 years ago without a trace, only to reappear before Bolu the day before yesterday, covered in scars and accompanied by her daughter. Bolu wanted to take her to the hospital, but she refused no matter what. Unable to persuade her, Bolu let her stay at our house without my consent. I was afraid of Bolu and also felt sorry for the injured Myra Gu, so I didn't say anything, but when I returned from hand-washing Bolu's and our 2 sons' undergarments, I found Myra Gu sleeping on my and Bolu's wedding bed, and her daughter even called me an idiot. I am the heiress of the Jiang group, and Bolu is my childhood groom. My mother fell seriously ill while pregnant with me. I was born prematurely and have slightly lower intelligence than average. When my mother was alive, she patiently taught me how to express myself, but Bolu never liked listening to me. The moment I spoke, impatience would appear in his eyes. After that, I tried my best not to speak in front of him. After my mother passed away, he became even more unwilling to listen to me. Over time, I no longer knew how to express myself in front of him. When my emotions erupted, I could only scream and shout. That day, in a fit of rage, I frantically drove them out. Bolu called me unreasonable and left with them. To this day, he hasn't returned, along with my 2 children, Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu. Today is the 7th wedding anniversary for me and Bolu. In my past life, I prepared a whole table of dishes that the father and his 2 sons loved. I originally planned to call them home as a gesture of reconciliation, but my son's words wounded me deeply. In my days, I tripped and fell, hitting my head. In my previous life, I couldn't understand why the child I carried for 10 months and painstakingly raised refused to call me mom, yet so readily called someone they had just met 3 days ago godmother. Now I understand. Inferior genes produce inferior offspring. In my previous life, it wasn't until Bolu died that I learned Myra Gu was his first love, and even Myra Gu's daughter was his. Due to my special circumstances, my mother always felt guilty towards me. After my father died in a car accident, fearing that I would have no one to protect me and would be taken advantage of after her death, she adopted Bolu from an orphanage. Originally intending to find me an assistant, she changed her mind after witnessing Bolu's talent and decided to make him my child groom. My mother often told me that Bolu would be my husband in the future, my only support, and encouraged me to spend more time with him to nurture our relationship. After that, I became Bolu's shadow. Bolu was exceptionally intelligent, having received a special elite education, and he joined the Jiang Corporation early to help his mother manage the company. Myra Gu was his good little sister from the orphanage. After he joined the Jiang Corporation, he used some means to specially recruit Myra Gu as his secretary, and the 2 of them began a secret affair right under my and my mother's noses. Bolu hated me for tearing him and Myra Gu apart. I will never forget the look in his eyes when he was dying. He had always looked at me with cold indifference, but in that final glance, even someone as foolish as I could feel the bone-chilling hatred in his gaze. He said, "Nora Jiang, I had wanted to treat you as a sister and care for you, But you made me and my beloved part for years, unable to return home. Now that I'm dying, you deserve to go to hell. At that time, I still didn't understand what he meant. After all, in my understanding, we were husband and wife, so our beloved should have been each other, and our home should have been each other's home. It wasn't until I saw Myra Gu's photo in his wallet, until I was driven out of the house by Myra Gu before I could even recover from the grief of losing him, and all our assets were left to his illegitimate daughter with Myra Gu, that I finally understood the truth of everything. Turns out, the one he loved was Myra Gu, and his revenge had begun the moment Myra Gu left. Before his mother passed away, he followed her wishes and married me, promising to take care of me for the rest of my life. After that, he coaxed me into having one child after another, making me pour all my energy into the children, leaving me no time for anything else, let alone the company's affairs. So much so that I had no idea when he changed the company's legal representative or when he transferred all the assets. After his death, I truly, as he wished, went through hell. But as for his claim that I broke up him and Myra Gu, I personally know nothing about it. Bolu is 2 years older than me. While he was helping his mother manage the company, I was still in school. I just happened to see Myra Gu once when I went to visit him. At that time, I thought Myra Gu was even more foolish than me. She burned her own hand while making coffee for Bolu and even stumbled into Bolu's arms while walking. After I learned to walk, I never fell again. As for making coffee, my hands were steady when holding the cup. Back then, I just couldn't understand why, despite both of us being clumsy, Bolu treated Myra Gu with such indulgence, tenderness, and care, while he was full of impatience toward me. I told my mother about my doubts, thinking that Bolu probably didn't like me. Just like everyone else, my mother comforted me, saying it wasn't true and that I shouldn't overthink it. But after that, I never saw Myra Gu again, until she returned 3 days ago. When both parties still have feelings, rekindling the old flame is inevitable. The leaves by the roadside swayed incessantly in the fierce wind, the sky was overcast, and lightning flashed with thunder, gripping the steering wheel. I still felt a sense of unreality. Subconsciously, I touched my belly. If I remembered correctly, I should be pregnant with Cece at this moment, in my past life. My 3 children and I were driven out of the house. Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu stayed with me for 2 years before they couldn't bear it anymore and went back to their godmother, Myra Gu. Only my youngest daughter, Cece, remained with me. Although I may not be as clever as others, I still don't want the property my mother left me to be taken by someone else. I hired many lawyers, but Bolu had already informed those law firms before his death, and no lawyer dared to take on the case. I sought help from lawyers in other provinces, but they said that as an illegitimate child, I inherently had inheritance rights, making this case very difficult to win. By the time I had spent most of the emergency funds my mother had set aside for me, I still hadn't won the case. Without a house, the schooling of the 3 children became a problem. In the capital, where every inch of land is precious, the money I had left was far from enough to buy a house there. Additionally, the children's education would require a significant amount of money. I had no choice but to take them to a small, remote county town, where I bought a house and settled down. Job opportunities were scarce in the small county town. Being older and a single mother, I faced numerous rejections in my job search. Fortunately, my appearance was decent enough, and I eventually found work as a waitress at a nightclub. Being a waitress is looked down upon by others, and in the eyes of my 2 sons, I was also seen as inferior. Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu thought I was working as a prostitute at the nightclub, and their disgust toward me grew even stronger. The disdain in their eyes was identical to Bolu's. One day, I came home after my night shift but couldn't find the 3 children, which made me extremely anxious. I checked the surveillance footage and discovered that Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu had dragged Cece into a taxi, just as I was breaking down in tears from panic. Cece was brought back by a kind stranger. Despite crying uncontrollably herself, she still hugged me with her soft little body, comforting me and saying, "Mom, if brother doesn't want us, then we don't want them either. Cece will always stay with Mom. Cece is my precious pearl, and also my salvation." Although we didn't win the lawsuit, the public outrage over Bolu dividing all his assets to his illegitimate daughter was intense, causing significant impact on Jiang Corporation's stock market. Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu, in their attempts to please Myra Gu, collaborated with her after returning to smear my reputation in front of the media. They called me the other woman, accused my mother of using her power to force Bolu to marry me, breaking them apart. Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu even claimed I earned money with my body at nightclubs, came home drunk to abuse them, and then displayed my scar-covered arms and chest in front of the cameras. No one would suspect a child of lying or slandering their own mother in such a way. After this incident, those who had initially stood by my side switched to Myra Gu's camp, joining them in condemning me both online and offline. During that time, I was like a rat in the gutter, despised by everyone. Those people found my home, spray-painted the door, and sent funeral flowers along with terrifying dolls. Even my daughter faced various forms of exclusion and bullying at school. During that time, I couldn't sleep night after night, my hands would tremble uncontrollably, I often experienced unexplained ringing in my ears, and tears would flow without warning. I couldn't understand the meaning of living. Once, I stood on the balcony, and if Cece hadn't pulled me back, I might have really jumped. Cece was terrified. It was as if she grew up overnight, sticking by my side every moment, cooking for me, even when those people came to our house again. She learned to call the police and shielded me behind her like a mother hen protecting her chicks. Cece is my angel. Looking at the 2-week pregnancy test result in my hand, I touched my belly, nearly crying with joy. In my past life, I didn't discover I was pregnant with Cece until a month later. After Bolu sweet-talked me, I agreed to let Myra Gu and her daughter Songyu move into our villa, while I was away. Songyu smashed the photoshopped wedding photo of Bolu and me that I had commissioned. Furious, I started bleeding and nearly miscarried. Bolu not only didn't blame them but also accused me of making a fuss over nothing, saying I was being petty with a child. I will never forget the smug and malicious expressions on Myra Gu and Songyu's faces when I was kicked out of the house. In my past life, under Bolu's protection and with the wealth he left behind, they thrived and relentlessly persecuted me and Cece. In this life, it's their turn to go to hell. When I returned from the hospital, the lights in the villa were on. I frowned slightly, remembering that I had turned off the lights before leaving for the hospital. Could it be that Aunt Wu had returned? I parked the car, opened my umbrella, and walked toward the front door in the heavy rain. Just as I reached the door, I saw Bolu standing there. The crisply ironed shirt was layered under a black suit vest, accentuating a straight and slender waist, while the 2 legs beneath the black trousers appeared long and perfectly straight. His facial features were sharp and striking, with a refined and handsome appearance. His brow ridge was pronounced, and his dark eyes carried an air of aloofness, tinged with a hint of gloom and coldness. He leaned against the door, simply watching me. I hadn't expected him to return, in my previous life. Although he came back today as well, it was only because I begged him to. The night my father had the car accident, it was also stormy with thunder and lightning. That's why, after my father passed away, I became particularly afraid of thunder. The condition Bolu set for agreeing to come back was to let Myra Gu and Songyu move in, and I agreed, but in this life, I don't know why Bolu came back, nor do I want to find out. I averted my gaze, closed the umbrella, shook off the water droplets, and hung it up. Just as I was about to step past him into the villa, he grabbed my arm. "Where have you been?" His voice was flat, giving no hint of emotion. I couldn't be bothered to talk to him and tried to pull my hand away, but he held on tightly. I looked up and rolled my eyes at him. "If your eyes are useless, donate them." In my past life, until his death, I never dared to act recklessly in front of him. Always carefully trying to please him, Bolu was clearly taken aback for a moment, instinctively glancing at the bandaged wound on my forehead. Taking advantage of his distraction, I pulled my arm away and went inside. Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu were playing with toy cars in the children's play area. Hearing the noise, they turned to glance at me, then snorted coldly and turned their heads away in unison. I glanced at the toy cars and immediately recognized them as gifts from Myra Gu. Having no experience in parenting, I simply replicated how my own parents treated me, giving them nothing but the best. The one Myra Gu gave them couldn't even compare to the worst one I bought for them. Yet the 2 of them were utterly enamored with this race car. In my past life, there was a time when I was tidying up the playroom, and they couldn't find it. They hit and scolded me, asking who gave me the right to touch the things their godmother had given them during dinner. They even threw a bowl at me, even though it was something from a past life. Thinking about it now still makes my heart ache uncontrollably. I took a moment to steady myself, then crouched down to change the shoes on my feet. Just got back and was in a hurry to prove Cease's existence. Haven't eaten yet. Now I'm a bit hungry. After putting my bag away, I went to the kitchen. While plating the food, I heard Bolu's voice. Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu, come eat. I just ate at godmother's place. I'm not hungry, Bolu said sternly. Come here. When I brought out the food, I saw Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu reluctantly coming to the dining room, still holding their remote-controlled cars in their hands. I didn't say anything, put down the dishes, then went to serve myself some rice and started eating. Outside, thunder rumbled repeatedly. The father and his two sons watched Nora Jiang eating alone, their expressions subtle. Even Lu Ziyu, who was engrossed in his racing game, loosened his grip on the remote control slightly. You see, in the past, it was always me who personally served them rice and coaxed them into eating the vegetables they disliked. After a long silence, Bolu got up and went to the kitchen. When he returned, his expression was not good. He said to Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu, "You two, go back to your rooms." Lu Qian was somewhat displeased. "I still want to play with the race cars godmother bought for us. Go to your room." Sensing the sternness in Bolu's eyes, the two climbed down from their dining chairs and returned to their room. After the children left, Bolu sat down across from me, his dark eyes fixed intently on me. In the past, whenever Bolu stared at me like this, I would feel uneasy, like a child who had done something wrong, wondering if I had messed up again. But now, under his gaze, my appetite was so good that I ate an extra bowl of rice. In my previous life, after he left all the property to Myra Gu and her daughter, I had been frugal for so long and hadn't enjoyed such a lavish dinner in ages. Just as I wiped my mouth, I heard Bolu say, "Myra Gu is being discharged from the hospital tomorrow. She doesn't have many friends in the capital, and staying outside would be inconvenient. I've asked Mrs. Wu to clear out a guest room." I threw away the tissue in my hand and interrupted him. "The guest rooms are cramped. I'll vacate the master bedroom. You can handle the rest." The master bedroom is the marital home of Bolu and me. I had just finished speaking when Bolu's words came to an abrupt halt, a trace of disbelief flashing in his eyes, as if he couldn't believe what he had heard. "What did you just say?" Perhaps realizing his own lapse in composure, Bolu quickly adjusted his emotions and, frowning impatiently, said, "Myra Gu was in the wrong last time, but she's always been naive and didn't think that much about it. There's no need for you to keep holding on to it. She lives with us and doesn't eat much. She's injured and raising a child alone isn't easy." Nora Jiang, when did you become so heartless? Didn't think that much. Heartless? Huh, I sneered. You can handle Myra Gu's matter however you want. No need to discuss it with me. With that, I stood up and left. A loud bang echoed behind me, followed by Bolu's voice, gritted through clenched teeth. "Nora Jiang, you're really something." I turned to glance at him. His face was dark with anger. The teacup in his hand shattered on the table, leaving a few cuts on his porcelain white skin. Perhaps noticing that I was looking at his hand, those deep black eyes held a hope I couldn't comprehend. I didn't understand, nor did I bother to guess his thoughts. I simply felt a sense of satisfaction seeing him lose control of his emotions. Suddenly, I seemed to understand why Bolu had sent me to hell in my past life. Seeing someone you hate in distress, watching them suffer, truly brings a twisted pleasure. I returned to the master bedroom and moved my belongings one by one to the guest room on the first floor. Bolu stood at the top of the stairs, watching me make trip after trip. I looked at the pair of pillows on the marital bed, and for some reason, my nose still stung fiercely. Bolu did have his good moments with me, too. He knew I was afraid of thunder. Whenever there was a storm, he would hold me and whisper soothingly, "I'm here, don't be afraid, go to sleep." Since my parents passed away, I've received too little love, so I always remember even the smallest kindness from others. I actually know that no one likes a fool. Not even my two sons, connected to me by blood after 10 months of pregnancy. They don't like me, they look down on me, so they've always refused to call me mom. I sniffled and took away the pillow that belonged to me. Just as I reached the doorway, Bolu blocked my path. Standing firmly in the entrance, his gaze fell on the silk pillow in my hand, his voice as indifferent as ever. If you move out today, don't ever think about coming back to the master bedroom. I said okay, and his face darkened instantly. He stood at the door, unmoving. I didn't move either. It wasn't that I was competing with him, it was simply because he was blocking my way. After a long silence, he seemed to concede, speaking in a tone that was both resigned and compromising. Fine, you win, okay, I'll book her a hotel outside. With your temper, Myra Gu is so naive and sensitive. Who knows how you might bully her when I'm not around? I stared at him for a long moment, instinctively wanting to say something. But in the end, I said nothing. He wouldn't move aside, so I hugged my pillow and squeezed past him. Just as I reached the staircase, I heard Bolu's voice. Thick with suppressed anger, Nora Jiang, my patience has its limits. You'd better know when to stop. I didn't answer or turn back, just carried the pillow downstairs. By the time I finished tidying the guest room, it was already past 2 a.m., lying in bed. I suddenly remembered something and got up to go to the kitchen. I guessed that Bolu might come into the kitchen to serve the dishes. So I preemptively put all their favorites into one container, knowing Bolu's temperament, he wouldn't touch it again. The food had cooled a bit, so I reheated it in the microwave before bringing it out. This is a high-end villa district, and the property management is very strict. Not even a single mouse can get in. Holding an umbrella, I walked to the garbage station, stopped in front of a few wooden planks, and called out, "Xiao Bai." Soon, a white dog came out wagging its tail, its chest low to the ground, clearly in the nursing period. The rain outside was too heavy, its fur slightly damp, it shook its entire body, happily grinning at me. I placed the box on the ground and opened it. The little white dog caught the scent and came over to eat. The heavy rain pattered against my umbrella. Watching the little white dog eating happily, I felt a moment of peace in my heart. I've always liked puppies. But Bolu doesn't. Myra Gu likes cats, so he likes them too. I mentioned wanting a dog twice, but he didn't agree either time. Later, with pregnancy and having a baby, we never got around to keeping one. In my past life, after Cece graduated, because she was too busy with work to often keep me company, she bought me a little Pomeranian. Small dogs don't need frequent walks, which means they won't tire me out and can still keep me company. It had been with me for nearly 10 years, but Lu Ziyu threw it to its death when Cece turned 40. She fell seriously ill. The doctor said she wouldn't last more than 3 years. Fearing I'd have no one to rely on in my old age after her passing, she went to Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu, threatening to expose how they had framed me years ago if they refused to support me, to show the world how these entrepreneurs treated their own mother. That day, Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu stormed into our home in a rage. Xiao Ba, sensing their hostility, barked at them a few times. In response, Lu Ziyu grabbed Xiao Ba and killed it by throwing it to the ground right in front of us. Cece and I were terrified that day. After witnessing their cruelty, Cece didn't dare mention having them support me anymore. She just held me and cried, saying what would happen to me after she died. Truthfully, I had long stopped wanting to live. I just couldn't bear to leave Cece. The year I turned 70, Cece passed away from illness. Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu, afraid of being criticized by others, rushed back on the day of her funeral. After handling Cece's funeral arrangements, I ate a full meal, then sat on the rocking chair in the yard, holding Cece's favorite plush toy, basking in the sun. Once my body was warmed up, I took the sleeping pills I had saved for so long and swallowed them all with cold water. My stomach was writhing with sharp, knife-like pain. Just as I closed my eyes, a sudden downpour erupted from the clear sky. Cece was always the most afraid of me catching a chill. Whenever the weather turned cold, she would bundle me up in thick layers. I was afraid she would worry if I went down, so I struggled to climb back up, but it was just a rocking chair. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't muster the strength to rise. By the time I tumbled awkwardly to the ground, Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu were walking toward me through the rain, holding a black umbrella. I begged them, pleaded with them to help me into the house. They remained unmoved by my pleas, merely watching coldly as I struggled in the sunlit rain. The sunlight stung my eyes, the icy rain stole my warmth, and all my thoughts were carried away by the wind. I snapped back to reality, wiped the tears from my face, and only after watching Xiao Bai eat and drink his fill did I finally go back. The next day, I got up early, first visited my parents, then flew to Haisha, and didn't return until evening. As soon as I reached the door, I heard laughter and cheerful voices coming from inside the villa. Myra Gu was wearing a white dress, her hair styled in a very ladylike manner, appearing gentle and serene. Combined with the bandages covering her body, she exuded a strong sense of fragility, making one instinctively feel pity for her. She was the first to notice me. Perhaps too surprised, she choked on her food while eating. Seeing this, Bolu naturally reached out to pat her back, his eyes filled with helpless affection. Yet he pretended to scold her. "You're already so grown up, how can you still be so careless when eating?" Meanwhile, Lu Ziyu immediately stood up to fetch her some water, saying obediently, "Godmother, here's some water." Looking at the harmonious scene before me, I felt a bit dazed, as if they were the real family. After all, Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu had never even poured me a glass of water, let alone said a word of thanks, while Bolu, if I choked while eating, would only look at me with disdain. After drinking the water, Myra Gu timidly glanced at me, her eyes filled with caution. Noticing her gaze, everyone in the room turned to look at me. The cheerful laughter came to an abrupt halt. Bolu's gentle and doting expression froze into ice upon seeing me, his face instantly darkening. Those pitch-black eyes swept over my face once before, indifferently withdrawing their gaze, continuing to serve soup for Myra Gu. The two sons snorted coldly before also turning their heads away. When everyone ignored me, it was Myra Gu who stood up. She walked over to me and said softly, "Sister, you're back. Bo has made some dishes, let's eat together." Her words sounded exactly like when you visit someone's home and happen to catch them during a meal, and the host says, "Join us for some food." Bo Lu grew up in an orphanage, so naturally, he knows how to cook, but since he came to the Jiang family, he hasn't cooked a single meal, let alone one for me, now. The first meal he's made is for Myra Gu. I glanced at the table. Not a single dish I liked was there. As if sensing my thoughts, Myra Gu spoke apologetically. "Sorry, sister, we thought you weren't coming back tonight." So, I just glanced at them briefly before heading straight into the guest room. I put down my bag and went to take a bath. After a tiring day, lying in the bathtub felt so relaxing that all my pores seemed to open up, and I started to feel drowsy. When I came out after washing up, I saw Bolu standing on the balcony smoking. I don't know how long he had been there, but the whole room was filled with smoke, and I instinctively frowned. Hearing the noise, he turned to look at me. He didn't say a word, just stared at me with scrutiny. I went back to the bathroom and put on my underwear before coming out again. He didn't speak, and neither did I. As I was tidying up the clothes I had changed out of, Bolu's icy voice sounded behind me, "Nora Jiang. Aren't you going to explain?" I stopped what I was doing and looked at him, puzzled. "Explain what?" Perhaps my gaze was too indifferent. He looked at me, and his originally gloomy face momentarily stiffened. After a long pause, he spoke somewhat awkwardly, "Today, Ziyu and Qian almost arrived late for school." I sneered and looked at him, saying, "So you're blaming me for not waking them up today, not making them breakfast, and not sending them to school?" Before he could speak again, I continued, "Bolu, they're not just my children alone, I get tired too." Perhaps my tone was too sharp, or perhaps it was the first time I'd admitted exhaustion in front of him. Bolu froze for a moment, his thin lips parting and closing before he finally said after a long pause, "Then from now on, let the driver take them to and from school." I hummed in acknowledgement, then remembered something and added, "I'll be very busy from now on, so please pay more attention to the child's matters." Nora Jiang's words sounded like some kind of special instruction, inexplicably making Bolu feel uneasy. "Nora Jiang, what's really going on with you?" I didn't say anything more, averted my gaze, picked up the laundry basket, and headed to the laundry room. When I returned, Bolu was still in my room. He was leaning against the glass railing of the balcony, a cigarette but pinched between his slender fingers. Second-hand smoke isn't good for a pregnant woman's baby. Remembering Cece in my belly, I finally spoke up. "I don't like the smell of smoke." He paused, walked over to the coffee table, and stubbed out the cigarette in his hand. Seeing that he showed no intention of leaving, I spoke up. "Do you have something else to say?" He looked at me for a long moment and said, "I'm going on a business trip to J Country the day after tomorrow." When I heard J Country, I froze for a second. In my past life, he also went on a business trip to J Country, but it was 3 months later. That time Myra Gu deliberately provoked me, and I lost control and slapped her a few times, which Bolu witnessed. Furious, Bolu slapped me hard before taking Myra Gu and Songyu to Country J, where they stayed for 2 months. They slept together abroad, and upon returning, Bolu remained chaste for Myra Gu, cutting off all intimate contact with me. Fearing I might bully Myra Gu again, he secretly bought an apartment in the expensive capital city for the mother and daughter without telling me. I only learned this after his death. When Bolu said this, there seemed to be a hint of expectation in his dark eyes. He must be happy to finally get rid of a burden like me and enjoy life freely with the one he loves. I heard that Country J also has the biggest and most beautiful meteor shower. I clenched my fist and gave a faint "oh" in response. After my reply, his reaction seemed somewhat odd, and he added, "It'll probably take about a month." In the previous life, his assistant also said it would be a month. But to keep Myra Gu happy, he kept delaying it again and again. I gave a hum of acknowledgement. Then remembered something and said, "If you're taking Myra Gu and Songyu with you, you'll need to handle Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu yourself. I might not be able to look after them." Bolu looked at me with an incredulous expression upon hearing my words. Why would I bring Myra Gu and Songyu along? His counter-question left me momentarily stunned. Could it be that he hadn't planned to take Myra Gu and Songyu with him? Before I could react, I heard Bolu say again, "And what do you mean by handle Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu on my own? You can't take care of them, Norajiang. What exactly are you trying to do? Want a divorce?" His dark eyes stared straight into mine, as if searching for something, or perhaps scrutinizing. I pressed my lips together and remained silent. At that moment, Lu Ziyu suddenly rushed in, hugging Bolu's leg and saying, "Daddy, I want to go to Country J too. Can you take me, my brother, godmother, and sister Yaya with you?" Lu Ziyu's words felt like a knife stabbing into my heart, leaving it bloody and raw. All these years, I've been a full-time mom, giving them my all, only to be met with their disrespect, neglect, and disdain. I don't understand where things went wrong. My eyes involuntarily grew hot, and the last trace of familial affection in my heart was completely severed at this moment. I clenched my fists, doing my best to steady my voice and keep it calm. Ziyu and Qian are doing well in their studies, and going to Country J won't hinder them. If they want to go, take them along. Bolu was silent for a long moment before looking at me and saying, "Norajiang, are you serious?" I nodded. He sneered and said, "Norajiang, don't you dare regret this." With that, he grabbed Lu Ziyu and stormed out, slamming the door behind them. The day they left for Country J, I personally saw them off at the airport. Just before boarding, the look Myra Gu gave me was both triumphant and pitying. She said, "Big sister, I heard the meteor shower in Country J is especially beautiful. I think you mentioned wanting to see it before. What a shame you're not coming this time. But don't worry, I'll take lots of photos for you." Telling Myra Gu I wanted to see a meteor shower was already 7 years ago. It was the first time we met. She went to pour coffee for Bolu and me, wearing high heels, and accidentally twisted her ankle, falling right into Bolu's arms. I thought she was a bit clumsy in everything she did, so I considered her one of my own kind and told her everything. At that time, Bolu was also there. I never expected that after all these years, Myra Gu still remembered me saying I loved watching meteor showers. "By the way, sister, don't worry. I'll take good care of Bo." When she said this, she deliberately emphasized the word care. I pretended not to notice her provocation and responded with a somewhat dejected which clearly made her even more excited. What Myra Gu didn't know was that while she was excited, so was I. Originally, I thought the divorce would take at least another 6 months. But since Bolu went on a business trip to Country J ahead of schedule, it means the divorce can also be moved up on the agenda. Moreover, I just heard Myra Gu personally say take care, which made me even more at ease. After they boarded the plane, I quickly called Attorney Zhong. Perhaps the excitement in my tone was too obvious, as there was a light chuckle on the other end, followed by a slightly lower than average female voice. "All right, I'll make arrangements for the J countryside immediately." After finishing the serious discussion, I asked her, "When will you arrive in Beijing?" "Around 5 p.m. "All right, I'll pick you up when you arrive." After hanging up the phone and leaving the airport, I asked the driver to take me to the company. Last time I went to Haisha, it was specifically to meet Attorney Zhong. In my previous life, her law firm ranked among the top 10 in the industry. specializing in serving women and helping thousands escape their struggles. At 70 years old, though she had stepped back from the front lines, she still commanded great influence in the business world. That year, Cece fell seriously ill, and the medical expenses exhausted all our savings. She wanted to give up on treatment. With no way out, I saw her in the news and flew to Haisha, where I waited for her for nearly a month. When she finally met me and heard my story, she came out of retirement to help me fight the lawsuit. Because the case was so old and there was no substantial evidence, coupled with Bolu's legally compliant maneuvers, she put in tremendous effort to help us win back 20 million. Although 20 million was a drop in the bucket for the Jiang Group at the time, for us, it was a lifeline. In the courtroom, when I saw her, with her hair graying yet still dominating the scene, all I felt was admiration. I truly wanted to become someone like her. I've learned about Lawyer Zhong's past from a young age. Lawyer Zhong witnessed her mother being abused by her father. Her mother wanted a divorce but couldn't due to various reasons, until she was beaten to death. But she was too young at the time, and both families, fearing she would have no one to care for her, signed a letter of forgiveness. As a result, her father avoided prison. Her father treated her poorly and even took money from an old bachelor, intending to marry her off. It was she who found a way to escape. When she became a lawyer, the first person she personally sent to prison was her own father. Both she and Bolu fought their way up from the bottom, but their paths were different. Bolu had the support of the Jiang family. While she relied entirely on herself, there is an unbreakable resilience in her that nothing can defeat. Bolu's assistant, Chen Qing, wasn't surprised by my annual company audit. After all, I do it every year. Before my mother passed away, she instructed me to review the company's financial statements and assets annually, and I've always kept her words in mind, checking them year after year. However, the company's financial reports were usually flawless, which is why in my past life, I had no idea when Bolu began transferring the assets, but Attorney Zhong spotted the issue immediately. She flipped through the ledger a few times, frowning and said, "Looking at this is pointless. Have the finance department bring over the internal accounts." I was stunned. Internal accounts? Attorney Zhong's brows furrowed even deeper. You don't even know if your company has internal and external accounts. This is all your husband shows you every year. I nodded somewhat blankly. Some companies maintain two sets of books, external accounts for public viewing, while internal accounts are accessible only to the company's top management. Jiang Group's main business is in energy vehicles. Under Bolu's management over the past few years, it has squeezed into the industry's top 50. Even those external accounts show annual profits nearing 10 billion. Chen Qing was momentarily taken aback when I mentioned wanting to review the internal accounts, casting a wary glance at Attorney Zhong. Then, I heard him say in a strictly professional tone, "Madam, reviewing the internal accounts requires President Lu's approval. President Lu is currently on a flight, and I will notify him immediately upon his landing." I sneered. "What, as the chairman of the company, don't I even have the authority to view the internal accounts?" Chen Qing responded with ease. "Madam certainly has this authority. It's just that the group," before he could finish speaking, I immediately made an internal call to summon the finance director. Together with Attorney Zhong and his team, we conducted a thorough inventory of the company's assets, which took nearly half a month to complete. Bolu never called me again after the one angry phone call he made on the day I checked the internal accounts. On social media, I often see him attending various business gatherings and banquets with Myra Gu, who holds his arm, smiling like a flower, a perfect match of talent and beauty. In his free time, he takes Myra Gu and their 3 children on outings, watching meteor showers together and making wishes under the starry sky. In the past, seeing these photos would have broken my heart, and I would have called him, trying every possible way to bring him back. But now, I'm not very moved. And I even feel that Myra Gu has become somewhat useless. It's been over half a month, and there's still no progress between the two, apart from capturing them holding hands at the banquet. The detectives Zhong Lu hired have hardly recorded any other intimate gestures. Even the surveillance installed in Bolu and Myra Gu's hotel suite by the detectives didn't capture any inappropriate behavior. After Bolu arrives at the hotel, he stares at his phone for about 20 minutes. As if waiting for someone's message or call. I don't know what he was thinking. With his lover right beside him, How could he still have the mind to think of other things? Just like that, over 20 days passed without any movement from them. Just as I was getting anxious enough to consider some underhanded tactics, the two finally made progress. Myra Gu supported the heavily drunk Bo Lu into his room. Lawyer Zhong watched the footage on the monitor in silence for a long while before turning to me and saying, "Do you want to avoid them first? After all, for people who were once in love, seeing their ex with someone else, it's bound to be painful." I shook my head, staring at the two on the screen. As soon as the hotel door closed, Bo Lu pressed Myra Gu against it and kissed her. Myra Gu in the frame clearly froze for a moment before responding enthusiastically, like a match to tinder. The two kissed passionately, unable to tear themselves apart. By the time they reached the bed, their clothes were already scattered across the floor. At the critical moment, Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu inexplicably appeared outside Bo Lu's room. I had barely thought this is bad when Lu Qian swiped his card and entered. Upon seeing the two naked and entangled, they began shouting and screaming. Bo Lu was startled awake by a sharp noise and immediately pushed Myra Gu away. Frantically searching for his clothes, Lu Qian ran into the hallway and called me. I hesitated for a long moment before swiping to answer. Through the receiver, his voice was tinged with helpless sobs. It was the first time I'd ever heard him call me Mom so directly. "Mom, come to Country J right now. Fly here immediately." I looked at the computer screen and asked very calmly, "What's wrong?" Lu Qian on the other end of the phone was already crying, saying intermittently, "Daddy and that bad woman were hugging naked. Come quickly, come now, bad woman." I never thought there would come a day when Lu Qian would call his beloved godmother a bad woman. Bo Lu, dressed in a pure white robe, came out into the hotel corridor to comfort the crying Lu Qian. But Lu Qian wouldn't let Bo Lu get anywhere near him. Meanwhile, inside the room, Lu Ziyu was punching and kicking the naked Myra Gu, who reached out in an attempt to restrain him. In the high-definition footage, Myra Gu's fair neck was covered in dense love bites. I watched this farce and said, "What nonsense are you talking? You must be mistaken. I'm busy right now, so I'll hang up first. Have fun." After speaking, I hung up the phone and looked at Lawyer Zhong, asking, "Does this count as evidence?" Seeing Lawyer Zhong nod, I heaved a deep sigh of relief. About half an hour later, another assistant accompanying Bo Lu arrived and took Lu Ziyu and Lu Qian away. Bo Lu walked in, looking at Myra Gu's disheveled appearance. It was unclear what the two had said, but Myra Gu's face was full of grievance. After Myra Gu left, Bo Lu sat on the leather sofa. His reaction was somewhat different from what I had expected. Probably still not having cooled down, he looked rather dejected. He picked up the cigarette again, lit it, but didn't smoke it, just held it between his fingers. His dark eyes were fixed on the phone on the table, motionless, as if awaiting some kind of judgment. Perhaps because there were no outsiders, he no longer bothered to conceal his emotions. As time passed, I could sense his unease and agitation. The cigarette between his fingers gradually burned down over time. Bo Lu numbly raised his hand, stubbed out the nearly finished cigarette in the ashtray, then let his hand drop weakly. Those usually sharp dark eyes were now filled with confusion, unease, and a deep, profound despair. After a long while, he called me. I didn't answer. He called 5 times in a row, and I didn't answer any of them. Suddenly, a message from him popped up on WeChat. "Norajiang, pick up the phone. Now that I have the evidence, I can't be bothered to talk to him." So I blocked both his calls and his number directly. He made another phone call, then sent a message, probably realizing I had blocked him. He got so angry that he threw his phone to the ground, shattering it into pieces. I noticed a red dot there and clicked to open it, only to see Myra Gu's selfie with clearly visible strawberries, accompanied by the caption, "Big brother doesn't know how to cherish a delicate beauty at all." At a glance, I knew she had set it to be visible only to me. In her previous life, she often did this, posting many WeChat moments visible only to me. When I took screenshots to confront Myra Gu and Bo Lu, Myra Gu claimed I had someone Photoshop them, saying if I couldn't tolerate her, she would leave on her own. There was no need to tarnish her reputation. Bo Lu believed her and then turned around to accuse me of being malicious. I had no interest in paying attention to Bo Lu's emotions anymore. I turned off my phone and started drafting the divorce agreement with Lawyer Zhong. I suppose even the heavens looked down on that scumbag Bo Lu. The next day, on his way back from negotiating the last deal, he got into a car accident. The car crashed through the guardrail and plunged into the river. Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu were encountering such a major incident for the first time, so naturally, they were anxious. They called me many times, but I didn't answer or pay any attention. After being rescued, Bo Lu was in a coma in the hospital for a week. Just as I was regretting not having bought insurance for him, Bo Lu woke up. After he woke up, it was as if he had been knocked silly. He kept staring at the ceiling. Ignoring Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu when they spoke to him, Lu Qian anxiously called me again, but I didn't answer. The doctor came to examine him, yet he remained motionless in that position, as if he were dead. When I returned from a meeting, I received a call from the detective saying Bo Lu had suddenly pulled out his 4-tube and disappeared without a trace. I reviewed the surveillance footage before Bo Lu's disappearance. He roughly yanked the needle from his hand without bothering to tend to it, letting blood flow from the back of his hand to his fingertips before dripping onto the floor. Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu called me again. Even his assistant reached out to me, annoyed. I simply set up automatic blocking for calls coming from Country J. Chen Qing also received the news and rushed into my office in a panic. "Madam, President Lu has gone missing in Country J." Without even looking up, I casually replied. "Someone that big can't get lost." Perhaps because my demeanor was too calm, he frowned and said, "Madam, the two young masters are very worried and have been crying. Would you like to call and comfort them? They'll stop crying when they're tired." Assistant Chen: "Is there anything else?" Chen Qing seemed to have reached her limit and said to me, "Chairman, you ignored President Lu's car accident in Country J, and now you're neglecting your son when he needs you. Do you have no heart? All of President Lu's hard work over these years might as well have been for nothing." After speaking, he went out to communicate with the assistant over there to resolve the matter. I didn't say anything and directly sent the termination email to the HR department. Whether Bo Lu is missing or dead doesn't affect me much, but it will likely impact Jiang Corporation's stock. I called attorney Zhong in, thinking about how to handle the situation publicly if Bo Lu were to go missing. Just as everyone was overwhelmed by Bo Lu's disappearance, I returned home to find him bustling around the kitchen in an apron, with all my favorite dishes laid out on the dining table. I froze for a moment, almost doubting if I was hallucinating. He didn't look well. His beautiful eyes were bloodshot, as if he hadn't had a good night's sleep in ages. When he saw me, he stiffened slightly, then spoke up somewhat awkwardly. "Are you back?" I gave a soft hum in response, my gaze involuntarily flickering to the hospital gown he was wearing, unsure what he was up to. Noticing my glance at his hospital gown, his dark eyes suddenly lit up, looking at me with a hint of anticipation as he said, "I was in a car accident in Country J." His gaze was too strange. In this life or the past, I've never seen such a look in his eyes, eager, aggrieved, yet with a hint of seeking care. It was very much like a puppy begging for its owner's attention and affection. I frowned. Feeling somewhat uneasy inside, I uttered an "oh" and said nothing more, sitting at the dining table and staring at the dishes before me. "Is there anything else you'd like to eat? I'll make it for you." Bo Lu's voice when speaking to me was practically gentle compared to his previous indifference. In the past, he only used this tone with Myra Gu, treating everyone else with coldness. I shook my head and couldn't help but sigh. "This is the first time you've cooked for me." He pursed his lips and remained silent for a moment before saying, "In the future, whatever you want to eat, I'll make it for you." Whether in my past life or now, hearing such words from Bo Lu's mouth is nothing short of shocking to me. I reasonably suspect that he knew I had discovered his affair with Myra Gu and wanted to strike first. Quietly eliminating me to seize my assets, I tightened my grip on my phone, unwilling to let the situation drag on, and shook my head as I spoke. "No, Bo Lu, we no longer have a future, do we?" I saw Bo Lu visibly stiffen, then act as if he hadn't heard, saying, "I remember there's pineapple in the fridge. I'll make you sweet and sour pork with pineapple." With that, he turned to leave. I didn't understand why he was pretending not to get it, so I spoke bluntly, "No matter how much you make, I won't eat it. I find it disgusting." Bo Lu froze instantly, his handsome face turning deathly pale in an instant. He looked at me, his voice hoarse as he said, "Nora, I'm not dirty. Lu Qian called me and said you were hugging Myra Gu naked." "I didn't." "Nora, listen to me." As Bo Lu spoke, He reached out to grab my hand. I recoiled in disgust and said coldly, "Don't touch me." Seeing the disgust in my eyes, he immediately froze, at a loss for what to do. The air was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. I sat, he stood, and after a long silence, I spoke, "Bolu, let's get a divorce." "Nora, no, let's not get a divorce, please." Bolu's voice was hoarse, filled with pleading and even a hint of humility. Humility. I never thought Bolu would be associated with the word humble. Even when he was in the orphanage, he carried himself with pride. I thought of the astronomical figures in the internal accounts, and of Bolu's talent. A genius like him naturally has the capital to be proud and would not feel inferior, not to mention how humble he was in front of an enemy, someone he considered as low as dust. His eyes quickly reddened, and he almost choked out, "Nora, I'm a jerk. Hit me, scold me, whatever you want, just please. Let's not get a divorce, I beg you." His pain doesn't seem feigned. I don't understand. Marrying Myra Gu was something he dreamed of in his past life. "Bolu, I know you've always loved Myra Gu. Don't you want to marry her openly and grow old together?" Remembering something, I spoke again. "The matter with Myra Gu is our Jiang family's fault. If we hadn't adopted you, you might not have been separated from her. If I hadn't complained in front of my mother back then, you wouldn't have been apart for 7 years. Attorney Zhong told me that at such a critical moment, we shouldn't push them too hard. Those three have no conscience. If provoked, they might harm me and Cece. And the loss would outweigh the gain. Before achieving our goal, while he's still feeling guilty, it's fine to press the advantage and say some soothing words." Thinking this, I added, "Moreover, Ziyu Lu and Qian Lu don't like me as their mother either. They prefer Myra Gu, so even if we get divorced, it won't really affect them." Every word I said was carefully chosen, and I guess they were what he wanted to hear, what he desired, but I don't know which word suddenly struck a nerve. As Bolu's tears just fell like that, his dark eyes filled with deep pain and despair, he covered his face with his hands, repeating "I'm sorry" over and over again. His reaction was truly unexpected, even illogical. Did he get into a car accident in Country J and hit his head? Fearing he might do something drastic, I said, "Bolu, you should still remember the agreement you signed before our marriage. I'm giving you 3 days to think it over. If we divorce by agreement, I'll give you 20 million. If you sue for divorce, you won't get a penny. If you've made up your mind, then." I hadn't finished speaking when Bolu's next sentence sent me plummeting into an icy abyss. He raised his head, his eyes bloodshot as he stared at me and said, "Nora, I've come back too." Those lightly spoken words struck me dizzy and disoriented. The person before me overlapped in an instant with the one who had been full of hatred in my past life. And Bolu transformed into a ferocious demon right in front of me. I suddenly couldn't breathe, my entire body trembling. I wanted to call Zhonglu, but my vision began to blur, and I heard Bolu's frantic voice in my ear. "Nora, Nora, why are you bleeding?" "Cece." When I woke up again, I was in the VIP ward of the hospital, with Bolu by my bedside. I didn't look at him, just instinctively touched my stomach with my hand. Bolu seemed to sense my worry and said, "Cece is fine. You haven't eaten anything since last night. Have some porridge first." As he spoke, he handed me a bowl of well-cooked lean meat porridge. I pursed my lips and didn't take it. He sighed softly and said, "If you won't eat, doesn't Cece need to eat?" Hearing him mention Cece, I instinctively frowned and replied coldly, "You're not worthy to mention her, Bolu." If only he had left me even 1% of his fortune in my past life, Cece wouldn't have had to suffer so much with me. I hate Bolu. And I hate myself. I hate my own stupidity for not being able to protect my family's assets, for being taken advantage of and driven out of my own home. Bolu seemed to suddenly lose all his strength, his fingers trembling so much he nearly dropped the bowl. He said hoarsely, "I'm sorry." The most useless thing in the world is the phrase "I'm sorry." I didn't react, so he continued, "After I died in my past life, I stayed by your side the whole time." Before he could finish, I sneered coldly. "Heaven has indeed been kind to you, not only fulfilling your dying wish but also allowing you to witness it firsthand." Bolu, watching me being abandoned and betrayed by my own son, trampled underfoot by Myra Gu, cyberbullied into severe depression, becoming a public enemy, Cece being ostracized and bullied, witnessing us being dragged into hell bit by bit. "You must be feeling quite triumphant, aren't you, Bolu's face turned as pale as paper, overwhelmed by guilt, self-reproach, and regret. He uttered in despair, "Nora, I stopped listening to what he was saying, grabbed my phone, and got out of bed." Bolu cautiously tried to help me, but I mercilessly pushed his hand away. "Get away, don't touch me." I entered the restroom and sent a message to Attorney Zhong. Since Bolu has also returned, and he hasn't transferred his assets yet, he naturally refuses to divorce. Then, there's only one path left to take. Just as Nora Jiang entered the bathroom, Bolu's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID. It was his assistant from Country J calling. As soon as he pressed the answer button, his assistant's frantic voice came through. "President Liu, something terrible has happened." What's wrong?" "Last night. Didn't you ask me to buy jewelry for Miss Jiyu and Songyu? They wore it out today and were kidnapped on the street. The kidnappers called and demanded 500 million. Bolu's voice was cold, devoid of any surprise, as if he had anticipated it all along, saying, "Have you called the police?" "Not yet. The kidnappers said they'd kill the hostage if we dared to involve the police. In such situations, what else are you waiting for if not to call the police? Trust in the authorities' capabilities, report it, and have the police contact her husband as well. Matters like these are best handled by the family." The assistant clearly froze for a moment, not reacting immediately. Any other issues?" There was a long pause on the other end before the response came. "Understood, President Liu." Bolu hung up the phone and returned, but didn't see Nora Jiang, thinking she was still in the bathroom. He sat by the hospital bed and began ordering food for her. She was still carrying Cece and couldn't go without eating anything. After placing the order, more than 10 minutes passed without her coming out. Worried, Bolu walked to the bathroom door and called out tentatively, "Nora, are you okay?" There was no response from inside, and Bolu felt an inexplicable unease in his heart, saying, "Nora, if you don't speak, I'm coming in." Bolu waited for 30 seconds. But there was still no response from inside. He hurriedly rushed into the bathroom, only to find that Nora Jiang was nowhere to be seen. Bolu could never have imagined that Nora Jiang would vanish right under his nose, as if she had evaporated into thin air. No matter how hard he searched, he couldn't find her. If it weren't for her following the usual divorce proceedings and even making a public disclosure of assets, he would have thought she had truly disappeared. Nora Jiang was determined to divorce him. Now, in her heart, there was not a shred of trust left for him. She disclosed the assets publicly precisely because she feared he would try to hide them. If he hadn't also returned, she probably wouldn't have even told him about being pregnant with Cece. Bolu felt as if he had swallowed a bitter gall, the bitterness spreading from his throat all the way to his heart. Yet he couldn't blame anyone, for everything was the consequence of his own actions. In his past life, the arrogant young man knew nothing of love. He had always believed he loved Myra Jiyu, resenting her for reporting to Mother Jiang, for tearing him and Myra Jiyu apart, for forcing Myra Jiyu into a corner, leaving her no choice but to marry a 60-year-old man while carrying his child, enduring domestic violence, and suffering years of slander alongside Songyu. So he, too, had wanted Nora Jiang to suffer. Perhaps it was because of this obsession that he didn't leave immediately after his death, but instead stayed by their side the whole time. She witnessed with her own eyes how, after he told her to go to hell, his clear eyes were filled with shock and confusion, and then how she wailed in sorrow after his death. When Mother Jiang passed away, she cried just as heartbrokenly, her eyes so swollen she could barely open them. She truly was foolish and slow. Never realizing his hatred for her all these years, after his burial, she seemed to have aged considerably, with even more strands of white hair, and she became much more silent. It was expected by him that she and the 3 children would be driven out of the house. He hated Nora Jiang and, in truth, had little affection for the 3 children she bore. The only reason he had children with her was to keep her occupied with them and to bother him less. Therefore, he neglected the education of his 3 children, Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu, influenced by him since childhood, took Nora Jiang's efforts for granted, showing her no respect and even belittling their own mother. He was actually aware of all this, but simply couldn't be bothered to intervene. As the heiress of the Jiang Group and its nominal chairwoman, as well as Bolu's wife, even though people mocked her behind her back as a fool, everyone treated her with utmost deference in person. The grievances she endured were nothing compared to even a tenth of what Myra Jiyu suffered. Since Cece was born, she has always been more attached to Norajiang. He hated the crow along with the nest, and always felt that Cece was an ungrateful wretch, not at all as obedient and well-behaved as Songyu, and his dislike for her grew stronger. Perhaps Cece also sensed his dislike for her and didn't feel particularly close to him either. In reality, he left two wills. One bequeathing all his property to his and Myra Gu's daughter, Songyu, and the other stating that if those three children didn't want Nora Jiang to return, they would be given 20% of the Jiang family's shares. He hated Nora Jiang and wanted to see her abandoned by all, to watch her slowly dragged into hell all alone. But when he watched her being driven out of her home, losing lawsuit after lawsuit, and struggling to survive in the capital, he didn't feel the joy he had imagined. Even when she lost the lawsuits and secretly cried alone in a corner, he would feel a suffocating tightness in his chest. Nora Jiang had been raised in luxury since childhood and didn't care much for material possessions. Her tears weren't for the lost property, but because she had failed to protect what Mother Jiang had left her. It was him, taking advantage of her naivety and the fact that no one stood up for her after Mother Jiang's death, after Myra Jiyu claimed that Songyu was his child. He began transferring his assets. He thought that since Songyu and Myra Jiyu had suffered so much, these assets would serve as compensation for the mother and daughter, but later, everything he did came back like a boomerang, striking him instead. Songyu was never his child. That night he believed he was drunk and lay in bed with Myra Jiyu. In reality, nothing had happened at all. He thought the kind and innocent Myra Jiyu, in order to achieve class mobility, went after a 60-year-old married man. To climb the social ladder, she casually slept with a few men for a few nights, got herself pregnant, and leveraged the child's status to successfully push out the original wife and become the wealthy lady. Later, the wealthy man discovered the child wasn't his and began to abuse her, with no way out. Myra Jiyu then turned to him. He blindly believed Myra Jiyu. No matter what she said, he trusted her. Whenever Myra Jiyu and Nora Jiang had a disagreement, he would unhesitatingly take Myra Gu's side. Bolu couldn't bear to imagine how much grievance Nora Jiang had endured over the years. She just didn't speak up, or perhaps she knew that even if she told him, he wouldn't stand up for her or take her side. He was a failed husband, a failed father, and a failed human being. Mother Jiang adopted him and gave him the best education, yet after her death, he bullied her most cherished daughter in such a way. He was a complete and utter failure, countless times. He regretted why he had been so heartless and cruel to her back then. If only he had shown even a shred of mercy to his wife and left her some security, she and Cece wouldn't have suffered so much. Bolu's thoughts were in disarray, and his heart began to ache with sharp, stabbing pain again. Actually, Myra Jiyu was right. He had already fallen in love with Nora Jiang long ago, so, from the time he left the orphanage until their reunion, Myra Jiyu had been imitating Nora Jiang's every move, and as he wished, he fell in love with Myra Jiyu, because he knew the real Myra Jiyu wasn't foolish. He was just subconsciously resisting the fact that he had fallen in love with someone he thought was a fool. If only he had realized his true feelings a little sooner, perhaps everything would have been different. He had thought that his return was a chance given by fate to make amends, but it seems everything was already too late. Bolu looked around the desolate villa and suddenly realized how much emptier the house felt. Before, the house was filled with photoshopped family portraits of the four of them that she had arranged everywhere. Back then, he had scoffed at them. Now, with the photos gone, his heart felt strangely hollow. Matching couple slippers, matching cups, anything related to him, she had replaced entirely. Bolu stood up and staggered upstairs to the master bedroom. The giant wedding photo she had someone Photoshop and hung above the bed was also gone. Every trace of their shared life had been removed by her. Just like the love she had suddenly withdrawn, Bolu reached out to open the cabinet. He remembered there was a handmade bracelet she had woven for him, meant to bring him safety and peace, but he had never worn it, leaving it discarded in the cabinet all along. But now, the bracelet was gone. In its place were 3 condoms. In the jasmine scent that Nora Jiang hated the most, and Myra Jiyu, who loves jasmine the most, these, he didn't buy, and Nora certainly wouldn't buy them either. Contraceptives. They never needed Mrs. Wu to handle them, As for the rest, the only one who could have bought and placed them here was Myra Gu. Bolu's face turned pale, as if something had gripped his throat, making it hard to breathe. After leaving the capital, I arrived in Yuncheng. This was where my grandmother grew up. A place with beautiful scenery and a slow pace of life, perfect for recuperation. I stayed here to rest during my pregnancy, visiting my grandparents' graves in my spare time. Zhonglu often called to update me on the situation in the capital and the Jiang family. Bolu went to see her many times to inquire about my whereabouts. It's said that Bolu doesn't seem to be doing well, having been admitted to the emergency room several times due to drinking. When I heard this, I said, "His white moonlight just had an accident abroad, so naturally, he's not doing well." Myra Gu was first raped and then murdered in Country J, along with Songyu. Their bodies were dismembered by the kidnappers and thrown into a septic tank. This news even made it to the trending topics. After hearing my words, Lawyer Zhong remained silent for a long while before changing the subject. When I was 5 months pregnant, Bolu finally compromised and agreed to the divorce. He left with nothing but his 2 children, on the condition that he would have visitation rights for Cici, once a week. Once a week was too frequent, and I didn't agree. After another half-month of back and forth, he finally agreed to my proposal of once a month. On the day the plane landed, Lawyer Zhong came to pick me up, along with Bolu, Lu Qian, and Lu Ziyu. It's only been a few months since we last met, yet they seem to have changed so much. Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu have become quieter and more polite. When they saw me, they even called me Mom, and the look in their eyes was no longer one of disdain but of respect. As for Bolu, he's lost a lot of weight. Though he's dressed neatly, the exhaustion and weariness in his eyes are unmistakable. The incident with Myra Gu has hit him hard. Sitting in the car, before I could even speak, Attorney Zhong said, "Mr. Lu, to Huaju Junting. Please, Huaju Junting is in the northern district." Bolu changed direction and headed toward the north. The car remained quiet the whole way, except for Bolu's unnecessary greetings. For example, how the child is doing, whether there's morning sickness, if they're sleeping well. Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu sat in the back. I caught them glancing at me several times, or more accurately, at my belly, with curiosity in their eyes. When they noticed me looking at them, they awkwardly averted their gaze. In the end, Lu Qian couldn't hold back and spoke first, trying to be endearing. "Mom, Dad said that my brother and I are going to have a little sister. When she's born, we'll play with her and take good care of her. We won't let anyone bully her. By the way, what's her name? Take good care of her." In my past life, the ones who bullied Cici the most were the 2 of them. I pressed my lips together and interrupted him. "After your father and I get divorced, I'll take good care of her. You're still young. Just focus on taking care of yourselves." "Mom, are you divorcing Dad?" Lu Qian's voice carried obvious shock, as if he had just learned this news. I paused and looked at Bolu, who was driving, saying, "Didn't you tell them?" Bolu tightened his grip on the steering wheel and said, "Didn't have time. The trial is tomorrow." And he says he didn't have time. Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu began to cry, just like many children do when they learn their parents are getting divorced. Their sobs heart-wrenching. "Mom, we don't want you and Dad to divorce. Is it because Qian and Ziyu weren't good that you want to divorce Dad?" "Mom, from now on, Qian and Ziyu will be good. We'll listen to whatever you say. Please don't get divorced." In the past, seeing them cry so heartbreakingly would have made me rush to comfort them. But now, I feel nothing, just as they betrayed me to please Myra Gu, watched me and Cici suffer, and remained indifferent as I died in the sun shower. The bond between mother and child should have been severed in my past life. The car stopped in front of Huaju Junting. As I unbuckled my seatbelt, Bolu spoke. "Do you need anything? Let me help you. I'll get off here." He seemed to think he had misheard. Even Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu, who were still crying, turned to look at me, sniffling as they spoke. "Mom, aren't you coming home?" "No, I'm not." As I pushed the car door open, I heard Bolu say in a hoarse voice, "Nora." Just 2 simple words, yet they seemed to carry 1,000 unspoken meanings. I paused for a moment but didn't turn around. On the day of the court hearing, the judge asked me, "Ms. Jiang, are you certain you wish to relinquish custody and visitation rights for both children?" I looked at the 2 pairs of eyes in the gallery, visibly nervous yet filled with anticipation, and nodded without hesitation. "I'm certain." As the court session ended, Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu immediately stood up and ran toward me. In his haste, Lu Ziyu tripped and fell hard to the ground. Lying there, he pleaded, "Mom, please don't leave us behind, don't abandon me and my brother." Lu Qian also gazed at me with the same pleading eyes. I just glanced at them indifferently before looking away, after finishing organizing the documents. I had just stood up when Bo Lu grabbed my hand. He said with reluctance, "They're still young now, are you really going to abandon them?" I didn't want to hear what he had to say and simply looked at him, replying, "Bo Lu, you surely haven't forgotten how they treated me in our past life." Bo Lu's face trembled, his grip on my hand gradually loosening. After a long pause, he finally spoke in a hoarse whisper, "I'm sorry, I failed to teach them properly." I said nothing more, nor did I linger. Lifting my foot, I walked away without another word. "Mom, please don't leave us." Behind me, the heart-wrenching cries of my two children echoed. I clenched my fists, suppressing my maternal instincts, and walked straight out of the courthouse doors. After the divorce, my life finally began to find its footing. Attorney Zhong's law firm is still in the financing stage. I invested a significant amount of money to become her partner and purchased an office building in the best location in the city center of the capital, establishing the firm's second branch. While focusing on my pregnancy, I enrolled in online courses taught by top global business PhDs and hired a professional manager to take over Bo Lu's position. Few can match Bo Lu's talent. It's been less than 3 months since he left, yet the Jiang Group's performance has nearly plummeted. And even product updates have begun to receive widespread negative feedback in the market. For a long-established company like the Jiang family business, reputation is of utmost importance. I was so anxious that I was losing hair and couldn't eat for days. This really worried Attorney Zhong. "You must eat. Even if you don't, my goddaughter still needs to," he said. I stared at the company's financial statements with a frown and said gloomily, "I haven't had much appetite lately." Zhong Lu originally ran her own company, and her abilities far surpass mine. She picked up the statements in my hand, glanced at them, and immediately furrowed her brows. "In just 3 months, we've lost nearly 8 billion. How did this happen?" I pressed my lips together and remained silent. But she clearly already knew. After a long silence, she spoke up, "If all else fails, why don't you ask your ex-husband to come back? He seems quite willing. Don't reject it outright. Professional matters should be left to professionals. After all this is yours now. If he comes, he'll just be working for you. With me here, I'll keep an eye on the company's finances. He won't be able to touch a thing. Some men just don't know what they've got until it's gone. He's a classic case. Anyway, he has you in his heart now, and he's talented, highly capable. All that love-hate drama, what does it matter compared to money? Just call him over, learn from him. And once you've got the hang of it, kick him to the curb." To be honest, those so-called business PhDs can't hold a candle to him. No one ever complains about having too much money. The successful ones among those PhDs just end up founding business schools or management consulting firms. But when it comes down to it, what they teach is just theory, like education and training, all generic stuff. They haven't actually delved deep into various industries. At best, you'll only learn superficial things, stuff that's hardly useful in real life. A lot of things can only be mastered through hands-on learning, practice, reflection, and summarization. We women must not only learn to be independent but also master the art of leveraging symbiotic relationships. Everything in this world exists for us to use. If I had an ex-husband like him, I'd squeeze every last bit of value out of him. You don't love him anyway. Nothing he does can hurt you now. Just kick him to the curb when he's no longer useful. Lawyer Zhong's words struck a chord with me. After hesitating for 2 days, I finally called Bo Lu. I didn't beat around the bush. I straight up told him what I was thinking. There was no response for a long time. But Bo Lu wasn't a fool. Moreover, he had been reborn. And with his abilities, he certainly wouldn't fare worse than at Jiang Corporation. "If you're unwilling..." "No, I'm willing, Nora. I'm willing. I'll go back tomorrow." Hearing Bo Lu's somewhat excited voice through the receiver, I frowned and said, "You should call me Chairman Jiang." Chairman Jiang, I'm now 8 months pregnant, and whether it's studies or company matters, I handle everything online." On Bo Lu's first day back at the company, he carved out a short video division and began developing short video content. How popular short videos will be in the future, Both he and I know it, I just didn't expect him to develop it now. I thought he was going to go solo. In my imagination, we were supposed to be locked in a life and death struggle. I never imagined that after the divorce, we could still coexist peacefully. It's just that when I see him now, my heart no longer races, I no longer feel inferior or awkward, and I no longer worry about whether he likes me or dislikes me. I've started to take on the demeanor of a boss, even feeling pleased about the soaring performance brought by his return. It's as if we've switched places. I noticed he's begun to observe my moods and started trying to please me. He would even go halfway around the capital just to buy my favorite pastries, spend a fortune on albums I loved, and invite my favorite stage actors for me. The day I gave birth to Cece, because of the abnormal fetal position, I needed a cesarean section. He was upset for over half a month because he couldn't sign my surgery consent form. Even Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu learned to give me gifts in various creative ways. All of these were things I once longed for. But now, as I watch them do these things, I feel nothing inside. Bolu, just like in his previous life, died young. Fortunately, by the time he passed away, I had fully mastered how to manage the company, analyze the market, and had developed my own set of insights in the new energy sector. When I arrived at the hospital, he tightly held my hand, calling my name over and over through the oxygen mask, his voice growing fainter with each word. Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu stood by the hospital bed, covering their mouths as they wept, unable to speak through their sobs. I looked at him, raising a polite yet distant smile. "You've been too tired all these years, take a good rest." He looked at me, struggling to say something, but ultimately couldn't get the words out, only shedding a tear from the corner of his eye. After Bolu's death, I buried his ashes next to Myra Jiyu and Songyu. After Bolu's death, Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu seemed to suddenly mature. On Mother's Day, they bought me many gifts and also brought many for Cece. So many that I couldn't hold them all in both hands, perhaps having just lost their father. They projected all their filial affection for their parents onto me. They looked at the villa behind me, their eyes filled with a certain expectation. I know they wanted me to invite them in for dinner. Pretending not to understand, I said, "It's getting late now. You should head back early and be careful in the dark." They left disappointed, while I turned back into the house, carrying the gift box in my hand. As I passed by the trash bin at my doorstep, I threw everything in my hands into it. Right after tossing them, I caught sight of two figures in my peripheral vision. Turning around, I saw Lu Qian and Lu Ziyu standing there, each holding a clumsily knitted scarf, clearly handmade by them. They looked at the discarded gifts in the bin, then turned the same heartbroken gaze toward me. I pursed my lips and, after a long pause, said, "Since you've all seen it, don't come anymore from now on. I still can't bring myself to like you, even loathe you." Their tears fell just like that, trembling lips calling me Mom, but I no longer paid any attention, entering the house and closing the door. They stood at the door for a long time, then left in dejection. After that night, we never saw each other again. As for how they're doing, I'm not really sure. In any case, Cece and I are living very happily.